Today's the day I'm gonna rank every defense against e4 there is, and I guarantee it, I'm gonna anger some people. e4, or the king's pawn game, is one of the best openings in chess. However, it has many different ways to play against, and these range from my absolute favorites to horrific atrocities that should have never left the trash can. Subscribe for more videos, become a member to support me, and let's get started. Coming in at number 45, I have the Borg defense after we go pawn to g5. This thing sucks. I don't even know what to say. There's no plan at all. It does nothing useful, and this is probably the worst move you could ever imagine. Let's move on. This thing is horrible. But sadly, it does not get much better. Number 44, the Guatemala defense, comes after we go pawn to b6. White goes d4 here, and now any normal, logical, sane person would go bishop to b7 here, but instead you play bishop to a6, which, assuming this is not just a mouse slip, is just bad in every way. It attacks this bishop, I guess, but it's not a problem for them at all because they can simply trade. We'll capture back, and now we just have a terrible position here. Our knight is on the rim and it sucks. The pawns, what is going on with the pawns here? Everything sucks, our position sucks, our life sucks, and this opening is horrible. However, no rest for the wicked, because number 43 of the Damiano defense, after we go pawn to e5, white goes knight to f3 here, attacks our pawn, and we play f6, which is a very bad move. First off, white just ignores everything, just goes like bishop c4 and just plays normally. Our position sucks. Well, we'll never be able to castle because this bishop is just a complete monster, and we're doing terrible here. But this is made even worse by the fact that if white knows the move, knight takes on e5 here, we are just completely lost. This is the Damiano gambit. If we capture back, then queen to h5 check here, and we are completely lost. g6, and we end up losing our rook, and just disaster at every corner. This opening is completely horrible and never something you should ever play. 42, I have the O'Neill gambit when we go pawn to b5 here, which is, it's a really bad gambit. After white captures, we get very, basically nothing for the pawn. We can go bishop b7, and I do suppose there is, like, we get a little bit of development, I guess. White can just go knight to c3, defend very easily. I think this is not horrible, but our position is definitely not good, and this is not something you should ever play. 41, I have the magnificent Barnes defense when we go f6 here, which it doesn't like destroy our position. We're not lost here, but this just sucks. It does nothing useful. Our knight now cannot go to f6, which is like where it wants to go, and also now we have this diagonal open. It just sucks. Positionally it's bad. It gives nothing useful. It doesn't destroy our position, but never play this. Number 40, the Goldsmith defense, is I don't even know what to say for this. It's just a useless move. It doesn't destroy our position, but it does nothing useful, and let's just move on. There's nothing here. 39, I have the Fried Fox defense, and we go pawn to f6. White goes pawn to d4 here, and now king to f7. Is this bad? Yes, but I don't think it's as bad as it looks, because we can kind of play like e6 here, g6, just go complete like turtle mode, and surprisingly, we don't actually score that badly here. You should not play it, but I guess if you want to do it as a meme, this will not be an instant loss. Number 38, I have the Hippopotamus defense, which is knight to h6. Of all the squares you can move your knight to, why would you go to h6? It does nothing on the side of the board. You can't come to the center, and if they play d4, then they're probably going to capture your knight and just destroy your pawn structure, at which point this just sucks. You're not lost immediately, I guess, but it's just a very bad way of playing. 37, I have the Duras defense. People say this is like the worst opening in chess. It's not that bad. After f5, this is Duras gambit. White can capture, at which point we can now play knight to f6. Once again, it's not good, but like you're not checkmated yet. After like d4, d5, maybe you can win the pawn back, but if they defend here, your position sucks. e6, like you're not checkmated here. You're not checkmated, but still sucks, and you shouldn't play it. 36, I have the Jalalabad Sicilian after we go pawn to c5 here. White goes knight to f3, and now e5. It's a gambit and not a very good one. After white captures, this goes against like basically every principle imaginable in the Sicilian. There's nothing here. Like there's no point. After knight c6, takes. We can go d5, maybe get a semi-okay position, but we're still down a pawn here. We're not doing well. Are you checkmating immediately? No, but it still sucks. Number 35, I have the Wear defense with pawn to a5 here. I really don't have anything to say. I like it quite a bit more than its brother, the Goldsmith, because this damages your king side. This, it doesn't really help you, but it doesn't hurt you either. It's like basically just a wasted move. It's fine. Number 34, I have the Lemming defense with knight to a6 here. All the same reasons as before. It's slightly better than its brother because it doesn't mess up your king side. After white takes and you take back, like, this pawn structure is bad, but you're doing fine here still. Bishop b7, you're not checkmated, but it still sucks. Number 33, I have the McConnell defense after we go pawn to e5. White plays knight to f3, attacking our pawn. We defend with queen to f6 here. We do defend the pawn, but there's not really much here. White can just develop bishop c4, and we have a worse position, but to be fair, bishop c5, and I guess we're doing fine here. The big problem is if they play knight c3. If we let them get their knight into d5, we're basically dead here. You might as well resign. You're gonna lose the game. And so you prevent that with c6. At which point, I mean, you're surviving, but your position sucks, d4, and you're just getting completely crushed. Number 32, the car defense is h6 here. This is such a nothing move. It doesn't really hurt your position, doesn't really help much either. I guess it might prevent the bishop from coming to g5, but that's really all it is. Number 31, the St. George defense is a6 here. There's nothing here. Next one. Number 30, the Gundaram defense is e5 here. White goes knight to f3 attacking, and we defend with our queen to e7 here, which looks very odd. It does block our bishop, but it is safer than the other option. If you do actually want to play this, the idea is after like c6 here, prevent their knight from coming here, you can go like g6 in these positions, bishop g7, and although you have a very tight and compact game, you can actually get some decent positions out of this. However, I just don't really see the hassle. If you want to play g6, just play it here, or play d6 and then g6, you have better options. 29, the Blackburn Shilling Gambit is pawn to e5, knight to f3 attacking, knight to c6 defending, and after bishop c4, the Italian game, here we play knight to d4. It's fine, I guess. There is the one fun trap after knight takes an e5, queen g5 here, and this is the very fun trap if you don't know it. Knight takes f7, we take on g2, then move the rook over, we capture the pawn with a check, bishop e2 blocks, and then knight to f3, smothered checkmate. That is a fun trap. It's a cool trap, but the problem is here, in like 80% of games, they will just ignore this and just capture. You'll take back, at which point your position just kind of sucks. You're not checkmated, but it's a sucky position. Alright, at number 28, I have the Latvian Gambit actually starting to get into good openings. This comes after we go pawn to e5, white goes knight to f3 attacking, and now f5 here. Instead of defending, we counterattack on e4. The biggest problem here is that we let our king loose, and while there are some like actually pretty cool attacking ideas, they're always undercut because in so many positions we're just being forced to just defend here, and it's just a lot of big problems. Then again, people don't really know how to respond here, so you'll probably still get an okay game. Number 27, we have the sister opening, the Elephant Gambit after e5, knight to f3 attacking, and here we now go pawn to d5. It suffers from a lot of the same issues. It is slightly better because our king usually is not in the line of fire. However, the positions here aren't usually that aggressive, and after like captures here, maybe e4, they have a lot of pretty easy ways to defend. But if you want to go for it, you definitely can. Number 26, I have the Blackburn Gambit after we go pawn to d5 here, the Scandinavian, white captures, and here we now play c6. After takes and we take back with our knight, it's a pretty basic gambit position. We're not doing bad here, but we don't really have a ton of compensation for the pawn, but we will still be able to go like knight to f6, develop our pieces out, and get a normal game. I definitely think the pawn sacrifice is unnecessary, but once again, if you want to go for this, you definitely can. Number 25, very similar, I have the Godly Gambit after we go pawn to c6, white goes d4, this is the Carol Khan by the way, d5, they capture, and now knight to f6 here. After takes and takes, this is the Godly Gambit. It's similar in spirit. We get the same trade here. We capture with the knight, but the problem is, once again, it's not very challenging. White can just go like knight to f3 here, and everything is kind of defended. I do think there are some tricky tricks here, like bishop g4. This can actually get a bit scary for white, but they should be completely fine here. Number 24, I have an interesting one, the Bush Gas Gambit. After we go pawn to e5, white goes knight to f3 here, attack the pawn, we don't defend, we go bishop to c5 here. And this one's odd because after white captures back, 95% of the time here, people will have no idea what to do because it's mostly beginners playing this, and they'll play some like knight to f6 and just get completely rolled off the board. If you know what you're doing, you'll play knight to c6 here. This is the Chiodini Gambit, and after takes and takes, this is essentially a lesser Stafford Gambit, and there's no reason to ever play this when you have the actual Stafford Gambit. 23, I have the Owen defense. After we go pawn to b6 here, we open up this square for the bishop. It's not the best way to play, but we are still developing our pieces, and we do have some pressure on the center. It's just not that challenging. White can go knight to c3, and they have the entire center. There's still some good positions you can go here. I mean, e6, or possibly a double fianchetto of g6, bishop g7. It's not bad, but it's not super ambitious, and it's not super great either. 22, I have the check defense. When we go pawn to d6 here, white plays d4, now knight to f6, attacking the pawn. White defends, knight to c3, and c6 here. It's just not super ambitious. It's pretty passive. We are defending central squares, but like not too much. If white doesn't do much, if they just go like knight to f3 and develop normally, we can go like g6 here, bishop g7, and get an okay game. C6 isn't super useful, but it's still like a fine game. The bigger problem here is that if white goes f4, e5 is coming, and that is actually a pretty big problem. And to respond to that, we have to play some weird stuff like queen to a5, and then we have to go e5 here, and then this is getting kind of weird. It's okay if you want to go for it, but I think you have better options if you want to play like this. 21, I hate this one. I have the Fildor defense. Comes after we go pawn to e5, knight to f3 attacking, and now d6 to defend. Objectively, it's not that bad, and so I had to put it decently high, but practically I hate this. You block in your bishop, and basically what that means is you're going to be passive for the rest of the game. d4 here, capture. White has the entire center, and you have to go bishop e7. If I have this position, I would start just crying out of my board and just start smashing the chessboard and everything, because I don't want to go bishop e7 here. I mean, yeah, objectively it's fine, but why would you play this when you have so much better options? Number 20, I have the Russo Gambit. After we go pawn to e5, white goes knight to f3, knight c6, bishop c4 Italian game, and we now go pawn to f5 here. It's pretty good. You attack the center. There's a lot of tricky potential here, and the good thing is that most people don't know what to do if they capture, which a lot of beginners do. e4, and you're actually already doing very, very well here. The problem is if they just play more solid like d3 or d4 here, you don't have a bad position. You're still okay here, but white is definitely a bit better, and this can get pretty awkward pretty fast. 19, I have the Nimzovich defense with knight to c6 here. I want to put this higher because I do think it is underrated, but sadly it's not super great. If they play pawn to d4, you basically have to play like d5 here and go into kind of a worse version of the Scandinavian defense. But to be fair, it does still have some tricks here with the knight on c6 instead. And if we play like e5 here instead, then they can go d5, and now our knight is being very annoying. But once again, if we back it up to e7, there can be some tricks here. D6, f5, we can still get an okay position, but honestly, I just think you have better options here, and I don't really see why putting the knight first it's just not a good option. 18, I have the Modern defense. This is by no means bad, but I just don't think it's very ambitious. We play pawn to g6 here, and most people play this have the first like 5 moves pre-moved. After like d4, you can then play d6, bishop g7, knight f6, and then very quickly castle. And at this point, you're doing fine, but I don't think it's super exciting. When it's not the King's Indian, g6 and bishop g7 here doesn't tend to work out super well because the target and center can always be pretty easily defended. Is it bad? No. Is it good for beginners? Yes, because you can always get a safe position. Higher than that, though, it's once again, it's not a bad position, but it's not super exciting. 17, I have the Pierce defense with d6. It's basically the same as the Modern defense. I think it's a little bit better because it's less committal. You have some other options here, which I do find to be a little better, but most of the time you're going to go g6, and it's going to go into the exact same thing. 16, I have the Alekhine's defense. After we go knight to f6 here. And although you're gonna get your knight kicked around after e5, this is actually quite nice. After knight to d5 here, let's say white goes d4. Although your knight is getting kicked around after e6, will probably get kicked around some more. White has a lot of space in center here, but most of the time you're going to chip away at it with moves like a d6 and c5 here and d5, and white has actually a lot of trouble here completely consolidating. I like this opening. It's definitely not the best objectively, but it definitely is quite underrated, and I would recommend you give it a go. Number 15, I have the accelerated dragon here with pawn to c5. White goes knight to f3, knight c6, and after this trade in the center, we go g6 here. I find this to be just a better version of the modern or Pierce defense. It's the same thing, but with this trade in the center, that just means our bishop is going to be a lot more powerful than it is in those variations. And other than that, it's pretty similar. Yes, there are some differences, but overall it's more or less the same. And that is a pretty good and stable way of playing, but not super ambitious. Number 14, I have a really hard one to rank, the Klosterbauer Gambit. After e4, we go d5, the Scandinavian defense, captures, c6, they take, but unlike the Blackburn Gambit where we capture back for the knight, here we go e5. This is difficult because the engine says you're stupid, you should stop playing chess, and that white is basically winning here because they are up 2 pawns, but after captures and captures here, black wins like 65% of games, which for move 4 is really, really good. So pick your poison if you want to go for it. I have been on the receiving end. This is really hard to actually play against and find all the good moves. You definitely should, but as you go higher, you should keep in mind that objectively this is losing. Number 13, I have the Gocho Piano. I might be completely butchering how to say that, but I never learned how to say it, and I never will. It comes after we go pawn to e5 here, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop c4 Italian game, and here now bishop c5. And this is a fine way of playing. Like, there's nothing, I don't think there's a single thing wrong with this opening. It's just not super exciting, not super ambitious. You're not really putting pressure on them. They can always just castle here. And I mean, knight to f6. Are you doing bad? No, but this is probably going to be a very boring game where it's going to be slow. Maybe you'll win, maybe not. It doesn't matter to me because I'll have fallen asleep halfway through the game. Number 12, I have the Valencian variation where we play pawn to d5, the Scandinavian. They capture, we take back the queen, and here after knight to c3 attacking our queen, the main line here is queen a5, but we back it up to d8. And it's not bad. It's not the best square for a queen, but this thing about this is really it's being used because it is extremely, extremely solid. You can always play like c6 here, e6, rotate your pieces to the central d5 square. I don't think it's the most ambitious. You're not like trying to get a big attack or win super fast. However, you get yourself a good, safe, solid position, which is, if you want that, this could be very good for you. Number 11, I have the Stafford Gambit. After we go pawn to e5 here, white goes knight to f3, knight to f6, the Russian defense. White captures, and here the main line is d6, but instead we play knight to c6, and this is another difficult one to rank. After captures and captures, engine says white is much better, you're stupid, stop playing chess. Practically so many traps here. There's like 15 different traps because bishop c5, and there are so many tricks on f7, on e5, the knight, h5, some super fun tricks like this, and your queen comes in. So many ways it can go. The biggest problem here is if they know the line. Like there's some good lines here. I think the best one is d3. And after bishop c5 here, c3, d4, and this can start to get bad, or actually not even here actually, knight takes an e4. I just fell for a trap. Captures, bishop takes f7. So you can see definitely how this is still not super simple. And 1, nobody below like 1800 will know the best lines. And 2, even if they do, there are still so many tricks in those lines, even the engine's best ones. You can research them if you want, but even at my level, people are still commonly losing to this. Number 10, I have the Russian defense after e5, knight to f3, and knight to f6 here. It's completely fine. Once again, I don't think there's anything wrong with this one. It's just really boring. After knight takes, you can, if you're insane, go for the variation knight to c6, Stafford Gambit, or if you want to go for the main line here, d6, drops back, captures, and Like I said, this is just very, very boring chess. You're completely fine in basically every one of these variations, but I mean, personally, I like having fun chess that's risky a lot more than boring chess where I'll be fine. Number 9, I have the Scandinavian defense here with pawn up to d5, white captures, and I'm talking about the mainline Scandi here, which comes after takes, knight c3, and now queen to a5. This is a very good opening. You keep your queen in the center. It still has some play, and worst case scenario, you can always play c6 and drop it back to c7. There are a lot of fun lines here. I definitely don't think it's the best. Your position will usually be a little bit passive here, and white always has more space in center with their d4 pawn, but it is still very good. Your queen has a lot of trick potential here, can always potentially reroute to the other side in some variations like this. That's always fun to do. It's not the best, but there definitely is a lot of aggressive fun in this opening. Plus, a lot of people won't even play knight to c3 here, in which case your queen is just completely dominating in the center. Number 8, I have the line defense with pawn to d6. White goes knight to f3, knight to f6 here, attacking the pawn, and after they defend, we go knight b to d7, which, let me clarify, these knight b to d7, d6 variations I do not like. Except for this one. This is the exception, because the idea here is we're going to play e5, and then from here we're going to play like bishop to e7. We're going to castle, and surprisingly here we're actually going to get very, very aggressive in these positions, even though we're passive right now, because after like castles, we castle. The point is we're going to rotate this knight to f8 to g6, and we're actually going to start a big king side attack, and we're so solid here that white has a really tough time attacking us. I'll definitely make a guide on this one day, but no, this is the only good variation that arises from the Philidor defense. Number 7, I have the Con Sicilian. After we go pawn to c5 here, white goes knight to f3, we now play e6, and after d4, trade in center, we play the key move here, a6. And this is very good because although it looks a bit passive, the idea here is we're controlling all of these light squares, and from here we can play moves like, if white's not careful, b5, start striking out in the center, and then play bishop to b7. And although our play definitely looks odd, we're doing very, very well here. The bishop is strong, knight of 6, move our bishop out, castle. I recently ranked this very highly in my Sicilian tier list, and yeah, because it's really, really good. It's also pretty beginner friendly compared to the other Sicilian I have on the list. Number 6, I have the Bot Van Karl's Gambit, and we play pawn to c6, the Caro-Kann defense, d4, d5, and e5 is the advanced variation. People claim this is the Caro-Kann killer, best variation, blah, 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 because c5. And what we're doing here is we are putting pressure on them immediately. If they try to defend with like c3, which is the most common move, then after captures, we are simply doing really good here because they have a gigantic weakness on d4, which they have basically no way to defend that pawn. The pawn is extremely weak, and if they try to capture here, although it is a gambit, it's not really a gambit because after e6 here, in about 90% variations, we're going to win that pawn straight back, and after like knight to f3 here, we capture it. We're just doing great here. Only problem is our bishop is locked in, but our strong center more than makes up for it. Number 5, I have the Najdorf. After c5, the Sicilian, knight to f3, d6, pawn to d4 by white. We get all the typical Sicilian moves. We capture, they take back, knight to f6 here, knight to c3, and now a6 marks the Najdorf. I could have put a lot of different Sicilians here, but I wanted to do the big one, the Najdorf. This is regarded as one of the best openings in all of chess, and if you ask the computer, it would probably put this at number 1, or very least like number 2. My problem with it is practically, one, there is a ton of theory. If you want to play this at a high level, good luck, because it's not going to go well. There's going to be a lot of lines you need to know, but to be fair, if you do know them well, you are going to get a very good opening. But even here, these are still going to be very difficult positions to play, like the poison pawn can still be very difficult to play, very tight positions, and such along those lines. Objectively, the best, but practically not quite. Number 4, I have the open game, which is pawn to e5, mirroring them. Personally, I've never liked this one too much, but I will admit it is very strong. Like knight to f3 here, knight c6, we can always easily defend, get our pieces out, bishop c5, knight f6, castles. You have a lot of ways to play here. If you want to go for a more solid way, you can do that. If you want to go for some crazy Traxler and Sano variation, you can also do that as well. My biggest problem with it is that if they don't play knight to f3, they actually have some pretty good other options. F4, King's Gambit gets dangerous, knight c3. I am a Vienna player. When I see e5, I am super happy because I have like a 65% win rate in the Vienna, and so you do have to know what you were doing regarding the other sidelines, but if you do, this is very, very strong. Number 3, I have the French defense after we go pawn to e6 here. The idea, we are building up for a pawn to d5 push, attacking in the center, and we open up this diagonal for our bishop. The other main idea here is we're going to go c5 and put a lot of pressure on their d4 pawn, knight to c6, queen b6 here, and there are a lot of fun variations here. The problem I have with it is that a lot of the time you will be devoted to passive positions. You'll have to play some weird stuff like f6 as well, or your bishop, this bishop is always blocked in, the French bishop, and so as a result, it never really gets to live that much life. However, this is still a very good opening with a ton of fun variations and also remains still extremely powerful. Number 2, I have the Sicilian defense after we go pawn to c5 here. I cannot explain everything here, but this is a very, very strong opening. The main idea is that we control the most important square, the d4 square, and we are so flexible here. We have so many like different ways we can play, which is both its strength and its weakness. If you want to play this, you need to know like what you are doing. There's going to be a lot of theory, and although you can go for some simpler options like g6, they will never be as good as the theory heavy options. So if you're high rated, I would definitely recommend this, but if you're lower rated or just looking for something with a bit more practical value, let's take a look at number 1. That being the Caro-Kann defense with pawn to c6 at number 1. And the idea here is, like the French, we're going to build up for a d5 push. However, now our bishop is not blocked in, leaving so many fun opportunities for play, and I really love this opening. I think it is definitely in my top 3 favorites. There's so many fun attacking variations while being very practical, not like too much theory, and a lot of super easy to play as well as fun positions, which is like, this is just hitting all the check marks for me. There are some challenge variations here, like the advance can be annoying, but then you have c5, the Botman Carls, which goes very, very well. If they capture c4, Panov, I think this is probably either their best or very close to their best options, but still here, knight to f6, g6, you still have very good options on how to play here, and it does all this while being great at all levels of play. I truly think this is the best option against e4. Alright, well thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. Like and subscribe for more. Become a member to support me. My current members are Hashi Rama, Kalul Dolem, Fesmeros Herkas of Versilia, and I Just Rizdu Up Productions. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time.